Hey guys, good afternoon. Fun to be here. Hello to those of you on the stream. We are here in New York at the Trump Soho with a large number of strikingly handsome people and switched on audience. So excited to share a couple of things this afternoon with you, and really to make this an ongoing part of our conversation with you and your industry. But to start it out, I think one of the things that I always think about when we think about partnerships, when we think about people that we work with, whether it's individuals or companies, I don't know how you think about it, but to me it's important to find common ground. What's the one thing we share? I think as it relates to LinkedIn and the search and staffing space, there's a moment. There's like a moment that we all value. And that's that point where an individual finds an opportunity that's the right fit. They land that dream job. They land that perfect thing that's right for them, that's right for the company they join, and things just go really well when that happens. In your cases, you monetize that event, so that's worth celebrating. But it's also worth like everybody wins in that scenario. I think about, we all have things in our jobs that when you do them, it feels like time just disappears. And like, you know that moment where it's like, I was made to do this. And it feels right, and your energy level goes up, and all is well. We also have those tasks that we do that aren't that way. And then when you're doing them, it's sort of like, it's like the energy vampire just came and sucked the life out of you, and you think, God, if I have to do any more of this. You know, and I think a dream job is about aspiring to have a lot more of the former and a lot less of the latter. So for us, about connecting talent with opportunity is one that we believe is incredibly important to work with your industry in doing. We have, to me, it's always fun to be able to spend time with some of you in the organizations. I've been with LinkedIn about 6.5 years, so that's sort of like dog years here. That's a really long time. As a matter of fact, I started the day that we launched Recruiter. We launched LinkedIn Recruiter. And so I like to say we had no success with that product until I showed up. The reality was it was ironic coincidence, but it has been a really fun run. And just for context, that was at a moment where we had, I remember the first milestone we celebrated was 20 million members. We thought that was like, wow, 20 million members, that's pretty impressive. But a lot of you, and a lot of those of you present in the room, these logos represent just a few of the folks that are with us. We've gone on this journey together. And sometimes it's been an amazing dance, and sometimes it's been an awkward dance, and we've tried to figure out how things are going to be changing now and in the future. It's been a great experience. And so what I'd like to do today is really two things. One is to update you, to give you an idea of kind of the current health of the ecosystem and where we are. I think LinkedIn, most of you, you've probably chosen to spend time with us this afternoon because this is an ecosystem that you believe has value for your company, your industry, you as an individual. And so I want to give you an update on that, on the health of the network, on how we're doing. And some trends, some things going on, and some where we're going in the future. The other thing I'd like to do, perhaps more importantly, is to talk about how the relationship between LinkedIn and the search and staffing industry. I think that's these are conversations that I think is incredibly important, is how do we think about you? How do you think about us? And how do we play together now? How do we envision playing together in the future? And so those are the two ways that I propose we spend our time for the next 20 minutes. Is that a reasonable topics? Okay, great. First of all, the primary operating principle for LinkedIn is what we call members first. And what that means is the most valuable thing that we do, the most valuable part of our ecosystem, is over 300 million members who pay us nothing. It's the member experience that is above and beyond anything else we do from a priority standpoint. To give you a practical example, if you were to go to Mountain View, California, where our headquarters are, and you were to walk around campus, and you were to talk to engineers about what are you working on right now, over 80% of the people would answer with something that they're working on that we don't charge for, something we don't monetize. So our highest focus is to be able to help professionals be more productive and successful. Because keeping that in mind, we create a vibrant ecosystem for all of us to thrive in. So members first is the number one operating priority before we get into some of the details and some of the numbers. Maybe another way to put it is, you as an individual are actually more valuable to the LinkedIn ecosystem than the company you represent. Because it's a collaboration of a lot of people, a lot of individuals. So what we aspire toward, our mission is to create economic opportunity for every member of the global workforce. That's our vision. That's a pretty aspirational statement. But it's something that we aspire toward. How are we doing against that? Well, depending on how you measure it, there are around 600 million professionals globally. Our membership today is over 300 million. We're adding about 2 members per second. So the number keeps changing pretty frequently. And that pace that we're growing, just to give you some perspective, that's about 50 million more members than we had at this time last year. So growing rapidly, we're about 50% of the way there when you think about number of professionals in the world. And of course, different countries were higher penetration than others. If you think about the global workforce, depending on who you listen to, there are about 3.3 billion members of the global workforce. So relative to professionals, we're about 50% of the way there. Relative to all members of the global workforce, we're about 10% of the way there. So just to get context of like where we are in this moment in time. We feel like we're in a moment that like is really important to get right from here to the next levels that we go to. And we are investing a lot of time and energy in making a lot of the right choices. And today we'll talk about how that relates to your industry and how we think about your industry and contributing to this ecosystem and vice versa. I wanted to point out some of the diversity of the ecosystem because numbers in themselves aren't that interesting. I can tell you that very few people in this room care about those 300 million people. There's some subset of them that you care about. And when I was talking about when I joined LinkedIn 6.5 years ago, we had around 20 million members. And at the time, I think it was fair to say a lot of people thought of us in terms of like a lot of people in the tech industry with senior titles in San Francisco and New York. What's happened since then is diversification has been pretty interesting. Some stats we brought up recently. So we have around 30 million students, for example. One of our fastest growing demographics is students. We have over 15 million members in the healthcare industry. Over 1 million in the fashion industry. And does anyone do search and staffing for ranching? Not a big space, especially in New York City. But if you did, we have 100,000 members in ranching. It's amazing the diversity of people and locations and functions that our network consists of. So, but the numbers themselves aren't as important. It's also about who are these people and what are we doing for them to be able to share their identity. You know, I think traditionally the profile has been a place where we create our identity, and there are certain things you can do on a profile that allow you to demonstrate who you are. One of the things that I'm personally most excited about is that beyond text is being able to, from a multimedia standpoint, demonstrate who someone is. I give an example of Kate here. Kate, who is someone that if you look at her profile and you look at the words on the profile and where she went to school, as a makeup artist is quite interesting. But actually, if you look at her work, you can end up creating a different perspective of who Kate is and what she's capable of. So you'll see us putting more and more effort into people being able to present who they are and the work they do in the way that can help tie their professional identity to what they're doing on LinkedIn. We had over 70% of our members in the last year update their profile and add more and more content to it. It helps the member. It helps us present ourselves more completely as a professional. And of course, it helps your industry because you have a better set of data to be able to assess talent from. The other thing that we've done that's driven what people do on LinkedIn is the amount of content available for professionals. So you can probably think about it in 3 ways, the way that we add value to members. One is identity. We talked about Kate, right? We're doing things to be able to help people demonstrate their identity in more unique ways. And the second is network. We help people manage their networks in various ways. And the third is knowledge. And knowledge is something that, if you notice when we launched the influencer platform, how many people follow at least one influencer on LinkedIn? Quite a few of you. You know, it's interesting, I happen to work at the company, but increasingly more and more of my professional knowledge is coming from LinkedIn. And by the way, a high percentage of it is coming here via mobile. And what we're seeing is now people can follow and connect with people who they respect in their industry. And we started with about 400 influencers, and that has now broadened the publishing platform, allowing more and more members to start to publish. Where if there are people that if you're an entrepreneur and you can follow Richard Branson, or if you're somebody who's really building a large enterprise and you think about organizational structure and management theory, you can follow Jack Welch. And the list goes on and on of people that I don't know about you, but for me personally, I've been able to really personally resonate with the long form post, which for me is just about the right length and it's not too long. And a lot of this content used to exist elsewhere in various places, but we didn't go to this blog and that blog and follow a bunch of different things. And having it in one place is really interesting. What's really interesting is this has taken off beyond our imagination of what we thought would happen in the traction that the influencers and now the publishers has had. I'll give you a quick example. I have something that comes up a lot as I manage organizations of people has to do with how people spend their time. And so one thing that I've happened to, has worked out pretty well for me is determining where I invest my time, my personal, my professional life. So I created a little publisher post called Roles and Goals, and it had like 10,000 viewers in a relatively short period of time. Just something that, some micro thing. I don't have a lot of skills. One of the skills I happen to have is being able to determine where to spend time, and that happened to help a few people. And you magnify that across 300 million people and the type of professional knowledge that we can create, is pretty inspiring. So we believe that the publishing platform itself is going to also not only create more value for our members, when I think about your industry, it means members are going there more frequently. And the more frequently members are visiting the site and finding value, the more interested they are in maintaining their identity, which gives you a more comprehensive set of information to work with. And someone they have with us today, for example, that's going to speak to you later on in our industry, a publisher, and if you don't follow him, I recommend it, Lou Adler. Here's someone in our industry in the recruiting space that has over 500,000 followers. That when he has something to say, they're receptive to it and they want to hear it. People like myself have raised their hand and say, when Lou publishes something, I want to hear it and I want to read it. By the way, Lou has provided me in my life the #1 question that I use in interviews. And I do a lot of hiring and a lot of interviewing. So some value that I received personally was the best interview question that I use from someone who I follow. And multiply that across various industries and various skills. We think there's going to be a lot of value here now and in the future. So we'll spend a little bit of time and talk about the relationship between LinkedIn and the search and staffing space. I remember a lot of conversations early on where the question was, is LinkedIn a friend or are they a foe? Like, should we trust you guys or should we be really freaked out about you in the industry? And I remember the summer, 2008, lots of conversations about the space because at that time, one of the primary value space for a lot of search and staffing industries was a list of names. And some of you will remember this, there was this sort of gold-plated list of names of people that we know that no one else knows, and the value we bring to the marketplace is to be able to provide that person to another person. And so those who lived only in data were quite concerned about the potential for a professional network to grow, and suddenly the professional identity becomes ubiquitous, that everyone has one, and it's visible to everyone else in the world. And oh my gosh, what are we going to do when that happens? And then there's another group of people that said, actually our skill is not in database management. Our skill is in professional services, being able to identify talent and opportunity, understand culture and values and brands and leadership and skills, and be able to bring talent and opportunity together so that everyone wins and it's the right match. And we're good at that stuff. And so companies that was their declarative value statement, professional services, and the skill of recruiting are the ones that saw us as an asset, as you guys do the data stuff, you create the identity stuff, we'll go over here and create professional services and it'll be a great alliance. And it's turned out that that's been true. Over the years, those relationships have been great. People have asked questions like, should we be concerned that you're going to start a staffing organization, you're just going to disintermediate the whole industry? And should we be concerned that you're going to align with certain groups of people, not other groups of people? All fair questions, all things that we've looked at. But when you think about LinkedIn from a monetization standpoint, and specifically the talent solutions business, which is what I'm responsible for, we think about ourselves actually quite different than that mindset. From a talent solutions standpoint, we are a platform. And really from a business perspective, if you want to just narrow it right down to the business, it's like a SaaS model or software as a service. We are a SaaS model, software as a service business that creates subscription revenue at high margin. Happens to be a wonderful business. But when you mix professional services into that, it's actually a different business. The financials around it, all the business aspects around that are things that are quite different than what a SaaS business is. And so when we think about the platform and what we're building and the tool sets that we're building, that's the business we're in. The business that most of you are in is professional services business, where you're providing skills to companies and individuals, and those are different business models. So how does our platform become effective? Our platform becomes effective when we have people that know how to use it. A tool in the hands of a craftsman creates an entirely different result than the tool in the hands of a layman. And so what your industry represents to me are the most skilled, talented recruiters in the world, being able to match talent with opportunity. So with our aspiration to make those things happen, to connect talent with opportunity, we can provide tools and platforms, but what we really need is we need partners that have the ability, the skills to use those tools effectively. So that's the symbiotic relationship that I personally see with your industry, is this is what you do for a living, is you're able to identify talent and to have this. This is not a trivial skill, as a lot of you know. As a matter of fact, I've talked to a lot of folks, and I've lived in a couple of continents around the world, and people who, they'll work for an organization, a staffing organization, and I think, this is easy, I'm going to go do it myself. And then they realize, oh, this is actually not easy. This is actually kind of hard. There's a lot involved to make this happen and make it successful. So there are kind of three things, I think, in your industry that I've just quick observations from the industry that I've seen. Three things that really help organizations succeed in your industry. Number one is great recruiting. Now, this may sound obvious, but being able to attract a lot of people to do a job is different than being able to attract the best people in the world at doing a job. And organizations that are really successful that I've seen in working with many thousands of staffing organizations around the world is they put a high priority on talent, bringing the best people in the world to do that function. A lot of companies in the world try and take the front line of their business and drive it to the lowest cost possible. And they think that's a real, whatever the front line of their business is. And I would say from a customer success standpoint, that's probably not a very productive move. I would think about putting high value on the person that interacts with clients and candidates. Second thing people do in the industry that I found, especially in the last 4 or 5 years, is a focus on their brand. What differentiates you from a competitor in the marketplace? Oftentimes, it's not the ability to find people and identify people. Oftentimes, it's not to be able to fill a rec. Oftentimes, it's about the brand that you have, and as a candidate, do I trust you with my professional path? Or as a customer, do I trust you to bring the right people into my organization? And brand resonates a lot longer than transactional success does. And people who are only interested in transactional success, in the cash flow of their business and how many recs do we fill, and how quickly, at what profit margin, that can be erosive over time if you're not considering the brand and upholding that brand as a premium standard in the marketplace. Those with better brands demand a higher price as well. And then insights. Increasingly, organizations, corporations, and other entities are looking to you for insights on what they should do, because more and more talent is becoming the differentiator between good and great. And they're looking a lot of times for you for insights. So the good news around great recruiting is that we do annually, we do a talent survey to determine which skills are most in demand in the market. And recruiting, the most recent survey is number 8. Recruiting as a skill is number 8 in the most in-demand skills out there. And by the way, this has been increasing year over year over year. It's becoming more and more and more important. If I were in your industry, that would be good news. As something is more in demand, creates better business opportunity. I think great recruiting, practically speaking, is something that goes like this. It's not just being able to identify a person who's like, here's a candidate that might be an interesting candidate, but it's also what we're doing to try and invest in your industry is to say, in addition to that, what are other people that look like that? Some of us remember the day where recruiting had to do with picking up the phone and getting through past a gatekeeper in some creative way, likely, and talking to someone about an opportunity that was the most amazing opportunity in the world, required hardly any effort, the rewards were amazing, and would you happen to know anybody that fit that? And we were either hoping they would say, yes, me, or they would say, no, but here's 3 other people you should talk to. Some of you don't remember that. I remember that. That was a lot of what recruiting was. So we're aspiring to create the good part of that, not duplicate the bad part of that. Similar ways. Here's someone who's likely the right type of talent, and surface who are some other people that may be like that. So we're looking to invest more and more in matching technology that can help you. Similarly, when you have jobs out there, actually getting a job visible isn't success of any type. Success is matching the right person with the right opportunity. So what we aspire to do there is make sure that we have the right matching in place so that those jobs are distributed to the right people at the right time. And there are a lot of different mechanisms we do, but over 80% of our members are not actively looking for a job at any given moment in time, over 80%. So success for something like jobs isn't about posting and praying and hoping the right people show up. It's about actually tapping someone on the shoulder at the right time and presenting that thought in their mind that they begin to engage with you. So we recognize this, and this is another area that we're investing time and effort in to make sure that this becomes a better and better experience in getting your opportunities out in front of people. We also look for organizations that are doing the right things when it comes to branding, to actually getting your image out. Not your job, not identifying a candidate, but just adding value to the ecosystem, whether it's your talent pipeline or other things you're doing to keep candidates warm. I think Cybercoders is a good example of something they're doing. I would call them kind of thought leaders. Small, short tidbits of value that to certain subsets of the population that they care about, that they're adding value to them. So imagine if I'm a candidate and Cybercoders is continuing to provide content that's interesting to me based on my skill set and what I do over some window of time. Pretty soon they become a more and more trusted brand because they're adding value to me as a candidate. I think these are the types of things that great search and staffing firms do, is they provide value to people. I guess another way to put it is they give before they ask. And if you think about being a good citizen, if you provide value first, it's a lot easier to ask for something in return. I want to talk just for a moment for those of you who are senior leaders in your organization, those of you that are owners, your presidents, your leaders in your organization. I believe that today, 2014 and beyond, if you're not taking a proactive leadership position and creating visible thought leadership out there, you're missing it. You're missing a great opportunity to attract the best recruiters to your company. You're missing a great opportunity to attract the best companies to you as clients, and you're missing an opportunity to attract the best candidates toward you. You have, as senior leaders, potentially the most leverage of setting the example of what it means to have a presence in social media and in other ways. And so an example of that, Alistair Cox, who's with Hayes. I spent a couple of years living in London and had a chance to work with a lot of organizations there. And one of the things that we've noticed, Alistair does, I think, a nice job of being able to publish some thought leadership ideas from his perspective, that whether you're interested in changing roles, whether you're really a candidate or a client or a recruitment consultant, is kind of immaterial. It's like interesting from a leader's perspective, and it creates a good brand. And it's something that the rest of his organization have taken on, and they're able to pay that forward and also to be more engaged. The more reserved senior leaders are, typically the more reserved their organization is, and suddenly you leverage that, you lose the opportunity to leverage that social capital that you have through your employee base. So I encourage senior leaders to get active, to get involved. We also find that people who do a good job become consultative to their clients, and sometimes in very practical ways. I'll give an example. We did an example of a search that if you're looking for someone who's a sales director in the United States, and this is how candidates start to go down this. I'm probably not your customers, but others. And they say, yeah, we're looking for someone, we need a sales director in the US, in the New York City area, in computer software, with 6 to 10 years of experience, with an MBA, right? They start to narrow that rec down to the point there's like one candidate. And I think what we aspire to do is provide tools back to you where you could show them in real time, you could demonstrate to them, if you lifted this restriction, your candidate pool goes from 7 to 69. If you tweak the search in this way, have you thought about this? Is this really important? Because if you tweak it in this way, your pool is quite different. Your opportunities are quite different. And in real time, you can be consultative to them. And you can show them that type of information. Another thing that I would think about as far as being a strategic partner is something called talent pools. And I don't know, how many of you have seen the talent pools that we publish on our site? Very few. Okay, so go to SlideShare, and on SlideShare, just search for LinkedIn Talent Solutions. And if you scroll to the bottom of that page, there are talent pools. And various industries, various geographies, and it will show you various things about the talent, supply and demand based on this talent. Let me give you a quick example here. Here's an example. I believe this is in the financial services sector. And on the x-axis, you have number of members, so supply. And on the y-axis, you have demand, people that are reaching out to those people for jobs. And so in the top left segment, you would have very few people with a lot of folks after them. So that's a saturated, very highly competitive area. And then if you look on the bottom right sector, you have a lot of folks with very little competition. So using this example, if you were working with a client, and you could show them that in Austin and Denver, this particular skill is incredibly competitive, which means it's probably going to be more expensive, time to hire is going to be longer, et cetera. But look at Dallas and Washington, D.C. Those are actually probably much better as far as the supply and demand ratio goes. Even more importantly, take a look at Toronto. If they're willing to either relocate people or to establish an office in Toronto, suddenly you probably have a much quicker time to hire, and you're building a team there. You could probably make it happen pretty quickly. Just use this as an example of a way to take data and be able to be consultative and help your clients succeed. These are the types of things that increasingly companies are going to search and staffing firms for, is help us understand this. And these are things that the folks that you work with at LinkedIn, we can help you find these tools, find this information, so that you can then go use it and help your clients be more successful. And in turn, help yourself be more successful. So summarizing, great recruiting, incredibly important skill. Focusing on your brand, also increasingly important because your brand matters a lot to candidates and to clients. And as it becomes more and more competitive, that becomes more important. And then creating insights. When I close on a look-forward basis, there are three things that we believe we can do as it relates to someone changing careers that we have kind of planted the flag on things that we want to help. Number one is finding work, helping people find that first job. I talked about the increase in students on our platform. That's not by mistake. We've put a lot of focus. It is very difficult today for people coming out of school to find a decent job, let alone the right job. Youth unemployment is skyrocketing, and their student loans are skyrocketing right along with it. So you have people with an increasing debt load and decreasing opportunity relative to past times. So this is a problem that we want to help solve. Second is, once you get that, then you want to find your dream job. By the way, just advice to people who are early in their career, worry about the first one before you worry about the second one, right? Just saying. I would recommend get a stake in the ground, get started. Once they get started, we want to help the company and the person find the right fit, find the dream job. Now you can focus on your dream job. And then finally, we aspire to help people be great at what they do. It's not just that point in time where you transition careers, it's actually being great at what you do. And those are things I think that we collectively can all agree that these are important parts along someone's career path. I'm going to close with a vision of where LinkedIn is. And by the way, I don't have a timer, so I don't know where we are in time. One of the things that you've heard probably historically is something called a graph. So in the social graph, like Facebook, you hear Zuckerberg talk about the social graph. And LinkedIn has been known as a professional graph, and Twitter could be known as an interest graph. So a graph, as it relates to, in this context, is something that is sort of stolen from finance. But you have a node, and then let's say people. So you have a person, and then there's another person, and there's a line between them that connects those two nodes. And there's a third person over here. You end up with this three-dimensional object of the way things are interconnected. So we've thought about ourselves as a professional graph for a long time. There's something actually broader than that we believe is not only possible, but it's something that we're moving toward. And I give you this idea because this is something that matters, I think, as you think about us as a partner in this ecosystem. So the economic graph represents 6 types of things, 6 types of nodes that we believe we can digitally represent. And by digitally representing all of these things and the way they're related to each other, you can essentially map the world's economy. So one of those things are members, people. Right? We talked about the progress we're making there and how we're doing on mapping that out. For professionals, we're about 50% of the way there. And we can see that coming together. Second is companies. We want to digitally represent every company in the world. In those companies, there are opportunities. We'll call them jobs for today's conversation. So we want to be able to digitally represent all jobs in the world. Pretty foreseeable that that's going to happen. And then every one of those jobs has a skill represented with it, or a set of skills, as do all of the people have a set of skills. Then we have educational institutions or schools that provide those skills. And finally, professional knowledge, the world's collective professional knowledge. We aspire to digitally represent all 6 of those types of nodes. And imagine, if you will, a world where all of that was available and visible in one place, in one big data set, for those of you data geeks. And our aspiration is to be able to represent it and to be able to step back and allow capital to flow freely to where it's needed, from where it resides to where it's needed. Suddenly, if you can do that, you can make a massive impact on the world. I'll give you a micro example, and then I'm going to exit. I live in the city of Chicago. I live in the Chicago area. I don't live in the city. But one of the things we've started having conversations with them, which is true in New York City, it's true in London, it's true all over the world, is there are a set of people over here that are unemployed, that are currently out of work or underemployed. And there are a set of companies with opportunities over here that are unfilled. Sadly, the mismatch is often these folks don't have the skills for these roles. And yet right in our community are these institutions that can provide these folks these skills to fill these roles. Why does that not happen? And in one of the reasons is visibility. People are often making decisions for yesterday, not for tomorrow. And we aspire to represent this information all in one place. And in doing so, we believe that we can improve the opportunity for each individual in the world, for each member of the global workforce. And in doing so, provide opportunities for businesses and for communities. And in communities, countries. We think it's a pretty big dream. And we believe that we're in the process of doing it. But we won't do it alone. We will not do it unless we have the right partner base to be able to help us collect all of these data sets in one place and to be able to connect them. And what you guys represent so well is the closest thing that I can see right now to this becoming a practical thing, is to be able for us to represent every member, every company, and every job, and to connect them where it's appropriate. That's what you do for a living. And that, to me, is one of the reasons that I'm so excited about the relationship that we have with you and what's possible in the future.